All right, panelists, we are now live on both Facebook and Zoom, and you can switch your cameras on. Welcome, 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 High Commissioner Shaik, Shaik, Ambassador Abuamara, Richard Falk, Wesam Ahmad, Avi Lewis. Welcome, 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 Prakash. So wonderful to have all of you here on such short notice. We are now live on both Zoom and Facebook. I can see that people are coming on, both audience members and journalists. I want to welcome everybody at home to our event, press conference, our press conference calling on Canada to support South Africa's submission to the International Court of Justice. With us today, we have High Commissioner Shaik, Ambassador Abuamara, Richard Falk, Wesam Ahmad, and Avi Lewis. Like I said, we are going live. We're also going to be live on CPAC. Please do feel free to share and further amplify. Karen Rodman will be sharing links for people who want to get this out a little bit further. So I just want to welcome again our esteemed panelists. Welcome to Rieaz Shaik, South Africa's High Commissioner to Canada, Mona Abuamara, Ambassador and Chief Representative of the Palestinian General Delegation to Canada, Richard Falk, former UN Rapporteur and Professor, Wesam Ahmad, Palestinian human rights advocate at the Palestinian organization Al-Haq, journalist, filmmaker, and professor, as well as member of the Jewish Faculty Network at UBC, Avi Lewis. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Bianca Majeni. I direct the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, which is based in Montreal or Jojage on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. Although today I'm tuning in from Kampala, Uganda. This press conference calling on Canada to support South Africa's ICJ, International Court of Justice submission, is co-organized by CFPI as well as Just Peace advocates. In addition to our speakers, we're also joined by journalists from the Globe and Mail, Canadian Press, CBC, Global News, CPAC, Hill Times, Ricochet, This Magazine, People's Voice, and more. And as I mentioned, we are going to be streaming to CPAC. If any journalists that are covering this event would like to ask a question, please do raise your hand virtually after the presentations and identify yourself, or during the presentations. Identify yourself in the media outlet in either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll unmute you to ask your question at the end. If time permitting, we may be able to take a few questions from the audience as well. So moving on to some background. Tomorrow, the International Court of Justice will be hearing South Africa's request for an emergency ruling on Israel breaching its obligations under the 1948 Genocide Convention. This is an important nonviolent effort to curtail the destruction of Gaza, which has seen over 23,000 people killed, 60,000 injured, and nearly 2 million people displaced. And today, 1 million Palestinians in Gaza are threatened by famine. So this event is really aimed at amplifying the growing call for Canada to support South Africa's important bid to end Israel's genocide. So in terms of some of the work, 10 days ago, the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute and Just Peace advocates launched an email campaign that resulted in 8,000 individuals contacting NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and foreign critic Heather McPherson to call on the NDP to support South Africa's case at the ICJ. The letter points out that the Trudeau government has previously intervened to oppose the ICJ giving their opinion on the legal ramifications for member states of Israel settlements and an international criminal court ICC investigation of its war crimes. The action called on the NDP to ask Canada to back South Africa's ICJ case as a way to preempt any similar effort by the Trudeau government and undercut, in terms of undercutting the case that begins tomorrow. And we're pleased to report that the NDP foreign critic McPherson has posted to X, formerly known as Twitter, citing Israel's genocide and the need for Canada to support the ICJ, and has also sent a strong letter on the matter to Foreign Minister Melanie Joly. So unlike previous cases at the ICJ and ICC, the Trudeau government has, as of yet, not come out against South Africa's case. This is better than it has been. It's far from enough. It's far from acceptable. Canada should, in fact, join a chorus of countries that have publicly supported South Africa's case, including the 57-nation Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Turkey, Jordan, Iran, Maldives, Malaysia, Bolivia, and Venezuela. And there's a growing call for the Trudeau government to explicitly endorse South Africa's case. The Green Party and Liberal MP Salma Zaid have released statements on the matter. The National Council of Canadian Muslims released a letter signed by 250 organizations with this demand. Lead Now's got a call bank. The Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East have an campaign. There is momentum. And today, please check the chat for the links. We are releasing a public letter calling on Trudeau to support South Africa's bid. In less than 72 hours, it's already been signed by 1,000 individuals, from renowned author and physician Gabor Mate to authors Rawi Hage, Alex Neve, QP Ontario's Fred Hahn, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, Avi Lewis, Richard Falk, Libby Davies, and many, many others. So the letter, which points out previous cases at the ICJ that the Trudeau government has supported, has been endorsed by over 100 organizations. I believe Karen will put that in the chat, but these include QP Ontario, the Canadian Arab Federation, amongst many, many others. And these groups and individuals are echoing and amplifying the work and position of the diplomatic representatives and scholars, activists that we're going to hear from today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Rieaz or Mo Schaik, South Africa's High Commissioner to Canada. Welcome, High Commissioner. It's a little shaky. I'm not hearing you very well. Are you able to get a little bit closer to the?
Are we good?
No, we can't hear you. Hold on. I'm going to take it off of speaker and put it in gallery. The camera's off too.
Is this better?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah. Maybe just go ahead. We can't see you. Oh, now we can see you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is my statement. We live in the times of catastrophe. We, either as individuals, communities, organizations, or states, are called upon by the troubles of our time, now more than ever, to assert our common and shared humanity. In our endeavors to find a path to that shared humanity, we would do well to heed the wisdom of the ancient sage Rumi, who said, "Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there." This is a field of human understanding. This is a field of human love, compassion, empathy, and justice, all of which constitutes the hallowed ground of our shared humanity. Arriving at this field of understanding bring forth the living expression of the African humanist value, Umuntu, Kumuntu, Gabantu, which means a person is a person through other people. I am because you are. In asserting my right to live, I must first assert your right to life. Arriving at this field of our shared humanity means to embrace the philosophy of the Dakota people of North America, Mitakuye Oyasin, that embodies the universal truth that all are related. Indeed, in our shared humanity, we are all related. The wisdom of Rumi, the beliefs in the truism that we are all related, and that I am because you are, compels us all as human beings to make haste, more so because of the troubles of our times, to that hallowed ground of our shared humanity. The government of South Africa, in its application to the International Court of Justice, has made clear its intention to uphold its obligation to our shared humanity as a signatory to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. To this end, we have instituted proceedings against the State of Israel for its military actions and intentions directed against the Palestinian people. We have done so firm in our conviction that the State of Israel's conduct against the Palestinian people may amount to genocide. We have done so in keeping with our obligations of the Convention as a positive step to prevent genocide. We ask the World Court to hold the State of Israel accountable for its own obligation to prevent genocide. In keeping with the terms of the Convention, we have requested an order of the court for urgent, necessary provisional measures, which includes, inter alia, the binding on obligation of the State of Israel to immediately suspend its military operations in and against Gaza. South Africa has heard the unbearable cries of anguish of the innocent from the killing fields of Gaza and broader Palestine. We mourn the deaths of all civilians, both Palestinian and Israeli, who have lost their lives in this senseless conflict. We must act to bring this brutal, systematic, and organized killing of Palestinian civilians to an immediate and urgent end. Not to do so is to negate our shared humanity and to violate our deeply held values of Ubuntu. By our action, we raise our voice beyond the binary ideas of right doing and wrongdoing to shout for all to hear. Stop the killing. Not one more day. Stop now. We have acted in this manner, not only because of the wisdom of the ancient sages, or to our legal, moral, and ethical obligation to do so, but we also believe that this is the most viable and immediate path to peace. For far too long, we have ignored the prayer of the Palestinian people to be seen, to be heard, and to be recognized for who they are, to live as a people in the land of their birth, free from the fear of oppression, occupation, and want. For far too long, we have ignored the pleas of the Palestinian people to assert their right to self-determination. Our shared humanity must demand from all of us to hear their prayer and pleas. This is the challenge of our time, and for the sake of all humanity, we must act. We as South Africans, whose lived experience has been shaped by centuries of apartheid, know precisely the lived reality of apartheid. We have lived apartheid and we have suffered apartheid. We know apartheid when we see apartheid. We are therefore comfortable in our knowledge that none dare contradict us when we assert that the lived reality of all Palestinians today is nothing short of the dehumanization of an apartheid life. Apartheid, as we all know, is a crime against humanity. In bringing our application before the World Court, we make no demand that others should join us. Each country must examine their own conscience in the cold light of all that we see occurring daily and relentlessly in Gaza. Each country must find comfort in their own understanding of what it means to be human, and determine for themselves their contribution to our shared humanity. We can only but humbly ask that in doing so, that they too embrace the wisdom that we are all related, and that I am because you are. As a country and people represented by our government, we as South Africans have made our choice. We have walked to that field of human understanding with our fearful but resolute courage in a manner consistent with our consciousness that rallies behind the clarion call of the Convention to Prevent Genocide. We do so urgently, and we ask forgiveness for not acting sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so grateful to South Africa. Thank you, Your Excellency. That was Mo Schaik, South Africa's High Commissioner to Canada. Our second speaker is Mona Abuamara, Ambassador and Chief Representative of the Palestinian General Delegation to Canada. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Tomorrow is a historic day for Palestine, for its people, and for its cause. Tomorrow, we are witnessing a legal action in pursuit of a long overdue justice for the oppressed and a glimpse of accountability for their oppressor. Tomorrow, we hope to move from the might is right to justice is blind, not blind to the pains and cries of the tortured, as it has been for more than 75 years and counting, but blind to power, wealth, and self-interest, as it was created to be. And tomorrow could not have seen the light without the bravery of an extraordinary, resilient people who themselves has been burnt by the flames of supremacy and injustice, but refuse to forget what those shackles of tyranny looked and felt like when they got rid of them. Instead, they have decided that their freedom was not complete without the freedom of the only people suffering under occupation and apartheid in modern history, the Palestinian people. That is what moral consciousness looks like. Today, my people are facing genocide, ethnic cleansing, and forcible transfer. What is happening in Gaza and West Bank, including Jerusalem, are not random, impromptu actions, but systematic, incremental steps that fulfill an overall goal of creating a land without people. And unfortunately, as this continues, we do not witness the support that the Palestinian people deserve from those countries preaching values and principles and rules-based international order. Palestine stays an exception to every rule. Instead, Palestinian people are being dehumanized every single day. And that dehumanization has started long before October 7th. For decades now, the normalization of Palestinian torture have been rising. And we have seen the normalization of such atrocities that the human value of life for a Palestinian became a lesser interest to the international community than it should be. Our lives are not less valued than any life. After the submission of South Africa's case against Israel, unfortunately, we have witnessed some statements coming from the US and from Israel that show exactly why we are here today, calling such an extraordinary piece torturous to read, and 84 pages filled with facts of what's happening on the ground, calling it meritless, counterproductive, and completely without any basis, shows us that this international rules-based order is not the same for everyone, but it's selective when it comes to the Palestinian plight. And as such, it's hid behind the self-defense mechanism that has been provided as shield for Israel for so long. I want to just guide you to a legal consequence that was presented by the ICJ, a legal consequence of the construction of the wall in the occupied Palestinian territory. And in 2004, the ICJ advisory opinion stated about the Article 51 that Israel claims in these days on its aggression on Gaza, And it says, nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense in an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. However, Israel does not claim that the attacks against it are imputable to a foreign state. The court also notes that Israel exercises control of the occupied Palestinian territory as Israel itself. The threat which it regards as justifying the construction of the wall originates within and not outside the territory. This situation, thus, different from the complemented by Security Council resolution, and therefore Israel could not in any event invoke those resolutions in support of its claims. It was about the wall, but the claim of self-defense fell then, and it falls now because civilians cannot lose the right for protection, even as Israel claims when someone uses the hospitals or schools that it was not able to prove, but a civilian does not lose the right to be protected unless they themselves are engaged in the action. So I wanted to get out of the way this accusation, this shield that Israel has been using, but in its own statement after the submission of South Africa, Israel called the submission a blood libel. And here I wanted to also note that the Palestinian struggle has never been a religious one, and it never will be. The Palestinian struggle is against a genocidal policies that have been set to ethnically cleanse and forcibly transfer the indigenous population on the ground. It's systematic, and it's a settler colonial imperial discourse that has been ongoing for decades. So there has been a collective failure towards the Palestinian people. And as such, there needs to be a collective obligation to prevent and to save the people from further torture and injustices. And here I call on Canada and on every other state that preaches to the world the importance of adhering to values and principles and laws and resolutions. It's a testament to what these forums have been built for and what they are being used as. Because without that, how can we trust one rule for all and a rules-based international order that is not selective and does not include double standards when it comes to the tortured and the weak? I want to thank you. Our leadership thanks you. Our people thank you for everything that you have done for us. This is not a move that after tomorrow we have a new day. We have a glimpse of hope that we are heard, that we are seen, and that our people could finally see that the world owes them the justice that they deserve. So thank you very much. And I hope that Canada would finally join this side, because history will remember. History will see where people were and what they have done. It's not that we say, we wish we have done more when it happened. It is happening now. So please act and stop the genocide against the Palestinian people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. That was Mona Abuamara, Ambassador and Chief Representative, the Palestinian General Delegation to Canada. Thank you for your important words and call to collective action. Our next speaker is Richard Falk, former UN Rapporteur, Professor Emeritus of International Law at Princeton University. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much for having me on this important and symbolically historic occasion where I have the opportunity to thank South Africa for its initiative and to express my solidarity with the terrible suffering that's been unjustly inflicted on the Palestinian civilian population of Gaza and indirectly also of the West Bank. Canada has a great opportunity and as well as a responsibility, a moral and legal responsibility to act in this context of the initiative that will be preliminarily decided this week by the International Court of Justice. A famous saying by Rabbi Abraham Heschel is entirely relevant. Few are guilty, but all are responsible. And Canada is in a position to break this silence in the face of a transparent spectacle of genocide and uphold what seems like a minimum duty to take this action to show support and to carry out the emphasis placed in the Genocide Convention, which is an international treaty that Canada is part of, to prevent genocide. It's too late to prevent it, but it's not too late to stop it. And it is a shocking reminder of the depth of the double standards to grasp the significance that none of the liberal democracies of the global West have to this point identified with the South African initiative. And those states that have shown support for this initiative all come from the global South. And it's a telling thing that countries, including Canada, that have been respected, even admired, for their adherence to the premises of liberal democracy, should put aside these traditional values and responsibilities and watch with an unwillingness to act this spectacle of genocide being daily shown through television images to the whole world. This has never happened before. The transparency of this genocide is different than other genocides, which have been known mainly in retrospect, after the fact, or through statistics and abstractions. Here, the peoples of the world have been exposed to the horrors of a genocide against an essentially helpless, vulnerable, already impoverished and abused people. And the governments that have proclaimed their moral leadership through law, through human rights, through their devotion to peaceful resolution of disputes, suddenly endorse this genocide. It's not just that they have not opposed it actively. The United States, my country, has given material support to Israel to carry out even more devastating attacks. So Canada is in a position which really will define its political identity for the entire world. Either it takes this moment to stand apart from the others in the global West and show its real fidelity in this situation of extremity, and to reject the primacy of geopolitics. This stand by the West can only be explained as a way that these white settler colonial states themselves identify their interests with those of Israel and their strategic interests in the overall Middle Eastern region. The striking contrast with the reaction to the Russian attack on Ukraine has not been lost on the peoples of the world. And so this moment is a moment of opportunity for Canada to reconsider how they want to be understood and seen as a nation before the conscience of humanity. And those opportunities do not come often. And it really is a choice between the traditional geopolitical fracturing of humanity and, as earlier speakers so eloquently said, the opportunity of exhibiting the unity of humanity. This is, as the Secretary General said, of the UN said, this is not only a humanitarian catastrophe, it is a catastrophe for humanity. And for these reasons. The only further remark that I would make is that we should understand that international law on its own, whatever the court says, and I hope it will affirm the application for provisional measures that is before it, and issue a decision requiring Israel to stop the genocidal onslaught. But we have no reason to expect, without political will, that Israel won't defy an order of the court as it's defied so many UN and international decrees in the past. And so this decision, even if it is defied, is of great importance and will escalate the activism of global solidarity initiatives. And it's a call to civil society to use its potential influence to rebalance the conflict in such a way that Israel no longer can hope to achieve its unacceptable objectives of ethnic cleansing and forcible transfer, and at the same time cannot afford to lose because it's placed such a high stake on taking this extreme action. And its only option at this point is to widen the war, to bring Iran into the war, and to make it a war of civilizations, the West against Islam. And as the Palestinian speaker pointed out, this is not a religious struggle. It's a struggle for human rights, for moral dignity, and for the serious commitment not only to have international law and international institutions, but to have the political will to see that they matter in the way in which conflicts are resolved. Let me stop there and thank the panel and the organizers once more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard, for speaking in such a heartfelt manner about this critical political and humanitarian moment. We just heard from Richard Falk, former UN Rapporteur. Our next speaker is Wesam Ahmad, Palestinian human rights advocate at the Palestinian NGO Al-Haq. Welcome, Wesam.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Professor Falk, Your Excellencies. It's an honor to be here with you and my fellow panelists. Following up on Professor Falk's statement with regard to the issue of political will, I think South Africa's move gives us hope that international law and the system can function if there is political will to do so. And South Africa's actions are a great example of this political will being manifested. The international law that we study, that we read about, sounds very good on paper, but without a willingness to enforce and give it meaning, then it just becomes something of the subject of academic studies. And we see it very much applied in the Palestinian context, where we have constantly complained the law is very clear, but there is a lack of political will. And this move by South Africa has given us at least an ember of hope that the system can function. But South Africa alone is not going to be able to move it as far as it needs to. It needs the support of third states. And this principled move, first of all, to commend South Africa, it stands as a testament to South Africa's unyielding commitment to human rights, justice, and accountability, as it further serves as a beacon of hope for the restoration of the international legal order that has been deliberately undermined for political expediency, not only since the 7th of October, but also throughout the past 75 years, since the start of the ongoing Nakba of 1948. And Al-Haq, along with other Palestinian organizations, have as early as the 13th of October warned and urged states to intervene to protect the Palestinian people against this impending genocide. And since then, Israel's intent has not only become more pronounced, marked by both explicit genocidal statements and genocidal acts committed by the Israeli military. And while we commend South Africa, we must also confront the undeniable truth that some third states have not only failed to uphold international law and their legal obligations, including their obligation to end the commission of the crime of genocide, but they've shamelessly been complicit in perpetuating injustice, including by publicly objecting to a ceasefire and continuing to supply Israel with military equipment. South Africa's decisive action should serve as more than a wake-up call. It demands that all third states rigorously reassess their commitment to international law and human rights. The prolonged impunity enjoyed by Israel, coupled with the international community's deliberate failure to contextualize 75 years of Zionist settler colonial oppression and domination over the Palestinian people has facilitated the ongoing denial of the right to self-determination and allowed Israel to commit genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. It's high time for collective reckoning with the complicity and a renewed commitment to justice on the global stage. As we call upon third states, including Canada and the international community, to support the proceedings at the ICJ and promptly intervene for an immediate ceasefire, we remind them that history harshly judges those who stand by during genocide. Neutrality in the face of injustice and genocide is nothing short of complicity, and a genuine commitment to the principles of justice and human dignity demand active engagement in upholding the rule of law. The case before the ICJ today is not only trying Israel, it's a trial of the international system and its integrity as a whole. If Israel continues to be an exception to accountability, the future of the international rule-based system will also be at risk. If Canada wants to be on the right side of history and a stronger future for this international system, it must act accordingly and support South Africa's ICJ submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your important words. That was Wesam Ahmad, Palestinian human rights advocate at Al-Haq. We look forward to hearing more from you and other speakers during the Q&A. Our next speaker is Avi Lewis, a journalist, filmmaker, and associate professor of geography at the University of British Columbia. Avi Lewis is a member of the Jewish Faculty Network at UBC, as well as Independent Jewish Voices. Welcome, Avi Lewis.
Thank you, Bianca, and it is an honor to be among such esteemed voices today. In the dying days of December, a group of a dozen or so prominent Israelis, academics, former diplomats, politicians, and others, sent a letter to Israel's Attorney General. In 11 pages, they documented, quote, extensive and blatant incitement to genocide in Gaza coming from Israel's political and media class. And they demanded that their country's judiciary do something to stop it. The letter listed example after example of horrifying statements by members of the current government and media figures in Israel, like, quote, the Gaza Strip should be flattened, and for all of them there is but one sentence, and that is death. Or, quote, we should have killed many times 20,000 people. We should have begun with a blow of 100,000. The letter says, quote, these explicit calls to commit atrocious crimes against millions of civilians have turned into a legitimate and regular part of Israeli discourse. Today, calls of these types are an everyday matter in Israel, end quote. This letter was sent well before South Africa filed its case with the International Court of Justice. And there's a lot of overlap in the incitement to genocide section. In other words, South Africa is echoing arguments and concerns of prominent Israelis in filing this case. This should not be a surprise. We are living through one of those moments in the long human story when people are forced to choose which side they're on. And more people, more and more Canadians are standing up to say, enough, this horror show must be stopped. So far, Israel has answered massive global calls for ceasefire by doubling down on the indiscriminate killing, maiming, and deliberate starving of civilians. And so the international community, including Canada, as many of our speakers today have said, has an absolute moral and legal obligation to step in to stop this insensate convulsion of violence and destruction. Today's event is about the machinations of international law, but it's also about the intensely human capacity for empathy and solidarity in the cause of justice. And so after 3 months of watching live-streamed shrapnel and blood-soaked rubble, I'm standing up as one of the signatories of this clear and well-argued statement calling on Canada, our government, to support South Africa's brief at the ICJ. As it's been said, in just over 48 hours, more than 1,000 people, 150 organizations have chosen to get on the right side of history to throw ourselves on one of the only levers available to make the killing stop. I'm proud to see that. I'm also proud to be part of a growing wave of Jewish people around the world who are standing up in this moment and saying, not in our name. Jewish groups, especially newer ones with younger members, are rising to embrace our moral imperative. We say at Passover, no one is free until everyone is free. And we say always, never again means never again for anyone. That's the growing cry you've been hearing across the continent and around the world, from If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace in the US, from Jews Say No to Genocide, the Jewish Faculty Network, Independent Jewish Voices here in Canada. Now, of course, there's not one opinion in the Jewish community. Some groups would have you believe that they represent all Jews in Canada, the Jewish community writ large. What a fatuous flattening of the diversity of Jewish perspectives. We don't all agree. In fact, we're having hard conversations, grindingly hard. One of the most beloved legal figures in Canada, Rosie Abella, former justice on the Supreme Court, wrote in a widely circulated op-ed the other day that, quote, it is a legal absurdity to suggest that a country that is defending itself from genocide is thereby guilty of genocide. That sentiment resonates with many Jews in Canada, but not with all. Look, Hamas launched a vicious and horrific attack on Israeli civilians on October 7th. In this brief we're here to discuss today, South Africa unequivocally condemns those attacks and demands they be investigated as war crimes. But Hamas has not killed more than 100 Israeli children every single day for the more than 3 months since. Hamas has not leveled entire neighborhoods where tens of thousands of people used to live, flattening them to dust. Hamas has not killed journalists, doctors, and nurses, attacked hospitals, archives, historic sites and government buildings. Hamas has not destroyed 33% of all the buildings in Israel. Hamas is not choking the supply of food and water into Israel to induce mass starvation of Israelis. Those are all things that Israel is doing to Palestinians in Gaza. So to Justice Abella, Rosie, I say with all the respect and love that I have for you, you feel it's a legal absurdity to suggest that Israel is committing genocide? Many Canadians are with me when I say it is a moral absurdity to call it anything else. Engage with the evidence in South Africa's case at the ICJ. In 84 pages and 574 footnotes, you will find the case absolutely overwhelming, incredibly meticulously documented. Let me end with this. Canada's decade-long record of providing international cover for Israel's occupation and violations of international law cannot stand one day longer. The immorality of our government's position has been well understood by people, by Jews, by Israelis for decades and decades. In September of 1967, 14 Israelis wrote an open letter published as an ad in the Haaretz newspaper. It was 100 days after the Six-Day War, 100 days into the occupation, which is now more than 56 years long. These Israeli Jews felt a similar fault line in history opening up at their feet. And in 52 Hebrew words, they spoke with a moral clarity and foresight that rings hauntingly down the years. And I'll quote, "Our right to defend ourselves against annihilation does not grant us the right to oppress others. Conquest brings in its wake foreign rule. Foreign rule brings in its wake resistance. Resistance brings in its wake oppression. Oppression brings in its wake terrorism and counterterrorism. The victims of terrorism are usually innocent people. Holding on to the territories will turn us into a nation of murderers and murder victims. Let us leave the occupied territories now." And today, nearly 100 days since the start of Israel's relentless assault on Palestinians in Gaza, we say to the government of Canada, support South Africa at the International Court of Justice. Stop the genocide now. Thank you.
Well, I think you cut out right there at the end.
I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avi Lewis. Thank you for your clarity in this moment. That was journalist, filmmaker, professor, member of IJV, Avi Lewis. I think my internet actually just cut out there a little bit at the end. My apologies. So I am now going to be opening up to journalists and audience members. If you are a journalist, please do raise your hand virtually. I will unmute you, or Karen Rodman from Just Peace Advocates, who's in the background, will unmute you, and you can ask your question. We had a few questions that were also submitted in advance and by audience members. I can see a couple of hands up here. Okay, so I'm going to take a question from Michael Welch at Global Research. Michael, you can talk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, first of all, yeah, it's a very good talk. An interesting statement is certainly going out, but I mean, I just have to note that in 2 years in the war in Ukraine, 550 children are killed, and in less than 3 months since October 7th, 4,119 Palestinian school students have been killed, and 7,000 others injured. There's been 110 Palestinian journalists in Gaza killed since October 7th, which is well in excess of the number of people who were killed throughout the entire World War II of journalists. However, I'm wanting to know, I mean, look, for years, Israel and the US have largely ignored the rules of international law. A positive finding of genocide at the ICJ can be ignored by the perpetrators, it seems to me. And the US would most likely prevent the UN Security Council from taking action against Israel with a veto. So how can this ruling, however it goes, how can it realistically do anything to actually halt or contain Israel's actions, not only in Gaza, but in Lebanon and the wider region?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to, perhaps I'll direct the first question at High Commissioner Shaik and Ambassador Abuamara.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. And we have been used to witnessing these vetoes and obstacles in actually implementing any resolution towards a just resolution for the Palestinian people, as you mentioned, in many forms. But ICJ is a very respected court. It's the highest court, and its opinions and its orders and rules are binding, but also historically have been accepted by everybody in general. So we are hoping that that would play into, at least if it's not a form of a halt of everything, it's not gonna just magically stop the genocide, the occupation, and the apartheid, but I guess it will make it harder for liberal democracies and for nations in general to do business as usual. On the other side, when you come and speak, if the court rules, and we are confident in the case that South Africa has presented, and especially the intent, which is the hardest part to prove, and the live streaming of genocide that everybody is watching in real time. So we don't think that that's going to be a problem to prove, but it will also break this victim syndrome that Israel is enforcing on everyone, and the feel that it's fighting for itself, a state that is accused of acting in a way that is not preventing or committing with intent genocide does not have the luxury of calling for self-defense or security. At that point, we need to start to talk about the root causes and how we got here, because it wasn't in a vacuum. So that's, in general, we're hoping that this will open so many doors and so many forums for civil society, for pushing states, for actually those states who respect the law. And as we said, this is a test to the legal order, and we will have to see. I personally don't think that it would be easy for countries to ignore the ICJ rulings, or for the US to actually enforce a veto on the resolution that would be sent on this regard.
The only thing I would add, Bianca, is that if Israel does not give indication that it is going to stop its genocidal action, then I think we as part of the world will give an indication that we are not going to stop our actions to stop the Israeli action of genocide. We will not stop in those endeavors. But I'm sure there are legal people who may add to what is the full spectrum of tools available to ensure that Israel is brought to bear to its accountability of its obligations to the ruling of the ICJ.
Thank you. Before we move on, is there anyone else that would like to speak to that question?
Maybe I.
Yeah, Richard and then Wesam.
I think the question is very important because it raises the underlying issue. Does international law matter given the record of defiance that Israel has exhibited over the course of its history, where it's repeatedly and flagrantly violated international humanitarian law and other legal obligations? And for the US to have already described the South African initiative officially as baseless legally, one has to doubt whether it will exhibit the political will necessary to implement the order of the International Court of Justice if it is indeed forthcoming. So it's important to understand that there's an implementation crisis with respect to law. The institutions exist, the norms exist, but the political will of those crucial actors does not exist. And I think the purpose of this panel and of the initiative is to summon Canada to exhibit, at least symbolically, a solidarity with the decency that underlies the South African initiative. And that's really important for international law. Just one further thing, that even if the decision is defied and there's no political will to overcome that defiance on the part of the important governments in the West, it will still have an escalating impact on civil society to show solidarity with the Palestinian struggle and to identify through empathy with the suffering that is being daily inflicted on a helpless, largely innocent people.
Thank you, Professor Falk. Wesam?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to address the question in the sense that the pursuit of justice didn't start with this move at the ICJ, and it won't end with this. It's part of a process, and I think the quote from Dr. Martin Luther King of the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice is very fitting here, because the pursuit of justice is a process as well. And these mechanisms, of which the International Court of Justice is just one element of it within the system, is something that we are engaging in the pursuit of justice. And regardless of how it turns out, that pursuit will continue. It will only shape how we move forward. And I think it also sends a strong message. What we are seeing today and on the streets of many cities around the world is the role of civil society and how they are able to influence the political decision makers in moving in a particular direction. And just because they might not be willing to do so today doesn't mean they can't be moved to do so tomorrow. And sometimes it's not enough only to speak truth to power. It is about also sometimes getting into that position of power and moving those wheels of justice in the direction that they need to be moved. And so I think we have been doing this work for decades and recognize that it's a long process. We don't expect it to happen overnight, but in the same way that colonization is a long process, decolonization is also a process. And we have to engage with the mechanisms and the tools that are available to us that we believe offer some potential for moving towards that pursuit of justice.
Thank you so much. We're going to hear from Avi Lewis on that, and then perhaps Prakash Dr before moving on to a question from the Hill Times.
I agree with everyone else that there are real questions of realpolitik here, which the international legal system has not ever successfully addressed in this matter. But there are real consequences. Canada is a signatory to the Convention on Genocide. Canada is a signatory to the International Court of Justice, as is Israel, as are many, many powerful countries in the world. And if the ICJ finds even a preliminary finding that there is a risk of genocide occurring, it exacts a positive legal obligation on all signatories to step in and prevent it. And so Canada is vulnerable if it does not respond, as are all countries signatories to the Convention on Genocide and the International Court of Justice. If there's a risk that genocide is happening, and we say as nation states in the world that we're against genocide, and this court to which we have all subscribed finds that there is a risk of genocide occurring, we are vulnerable ourselves if we do not attend to that obligation that we have as nation states. And finally, the facts that we're watching of a genocide unfolding are a result of decades and decades of impunity exercised by Israel. And that impunity is supported by the world's, in a multipolar world, there is still one overarching superpower, and that is the United States. But Israel and the United States and a handful of tiny states are isolated in the international community on measure after measure at the UN, on moment after moment in the unfolding of these international violations of human rights. Israel has to feel pressure from the entire international community before the United States will ever budge. And Canada is one of the last countries in the world that will stand up next to Israel and the United States against the rest of the world that is protesting and writing resolutions against the violations of human rights. In the Trudeau government, like the Harper government before it, like the Paul Martin government before it, like the Jean Chrétien government before it, like the Kim Campbell and Brian Mulroney government before that, Canada has consistently stood with Israel and the United States against the world on these fundamental moral issues. And this is a moment unlike any other when Canada can finally stand on the right side of history. That's a powerful position for our small country to be in.
Thank you, Avi Lewis. Prakash Dr is a human rights lawyer who's also here with us. Would you like to step in?
Very briefly, thank you, Bianca. I echo the words of my fellow panelist. If anything, it's not a foregone conclusion that there will be a positive decision, because politics of what it is may be influencing the judges as well. But let's assume, because the application is so strong on the facts and on the law, that one can assume that there should be a positive outcome. If there's no positive outcome on a case like this, then God help us. I don't know what other case before the court will ever be successful. So if anything, it'll be exposing the West countries, as Professor Falk says. The West, including Canada, will have no moral or authority or legal authority to talk about human rights, to talk about international humanitarian law, or to talk about the rule of law. And regarding the political will, it's the civic association, it's people, it's all of us individuals and collectively. And the High Commissioner will relate to this with our experience in South Africa fighting against the apartheid regime. Germany, United Kingdom, and the United States in particular were pro-apartheid South Africa. But it's the people's movement on the ground that over a period of time shifted their dynamics, that their policies had to change. And there came a time where even they had to support. So this is the beginning. It's not the end. And there is hope for all of us, because we are on the right side of history.
Prakash Diyar, thank you very much for your comments. We're now going to take a question from Stuart Benson at the Hill Times. One second. Stuart, can you hear us? You can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Hi there. I know, I think Mr. Lewis already sort of touched on this when he spoke about Justice Abella's op-ed, but we've had two Liberal MPs just, I believe, last night come out and agree with her statement, pulling at the quote, that calling it a legal absurdity to suggest that a country is defending itself from genocide is thereby guilty of genocide. So I guess just for a sort of an more open question, what is your sort of response to two sitting Liberal MPs making those comments? So we have two Liberals, I guess, against, one for, with Wesam Ahmad. So do you think there is a likelihood that Canada will support this, or do you think that they will sort of either stand off to the side on this and not take a position? And what would that mean for Canada if in either case?
Is that question directed at Avi Lewis?
Well, I know he already talked about it, so obviously he can speak on it, but sort of more open to the floor, I guess. No one in particular.
All right. Yeah, panelists, feel free to speak to that question. Anyone? I'm happy to call on someone. Richard Falk, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that as Avi Lewis has very eloquently informed us, Canada is divided on these issues, and you have to expect some politicians to side with the misreading of history, being on the wrong side, from our point of view, being on the wrong side of history. And that's part of the reality that Canada faces. We are asking the government of Canada to choose the right side from our point of view. And we think that this document that South Africa has prepared for the International Court of Justice makes that an easy moral and legal choice. There should be no ambivalence. It is as clear as law and morality can ever be. And if Canada evades that challenge, it deserves to be grouped with the other states, including the United States, as complicit in the continuation of genocide. A lot is at stake symbolically as well as substantively in reaction to what the International Court of Justice decides to do.
Thank you, Professor Falk. High Commissioner Shaik, Ambassador Abuamara, any thoughts on Stuart's question?
So it's expected that MPs will have their opinions would vary on the issue, but by the end of the day, if we are talking about merits, that's what's important. We always refer people to understand, to read, to define the things they're standing up for. The whole stand on Israel, on Israel's rights, depending on those opinions versus the just cause of Palestine, the values that Canada preaches. It's everything that Palestine stands for. Canada stands for self-determination, stands for the universal values and principles, all have been flagrantly and deliberately ignored by Israel throughout the years. So we always refer MPs to have discussions, to have open minds to the information, to the merits of every case, and then decide for themselves. Because we are confident that once they read the 84 pages of brilliance, torturous brilliance that was put by South Africa in this case, in this submission, after that, we agree with whatever they will come out to say, because at that point we know that they will stand for justice. So we want people to have the knowledge before the decision and not stand blindly with what Israel claims it stands for.
Thank God that the
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I come in? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Thank God that the founders of the convention saw fit to establish a court to deal with these matters and these disputes. And we have put our submission before a court. The process will be debated legally with the factual issues, maybe later in respect of the actual finding of genocide. But we are hoping that the provisional measures, which are the more important things for now, will be found by the court to be valid. And then we are hoping that those very MPs, in their pursuit for the rule of law, will abide by the decision of the court of law in respect of this matter.
Thank you. I think that is an excellent note on which to end. We have no more questions from journalists at this point. And
Bianca, can I jump in with a brief reflection, just because Stuart's question was on domestic politics, and I just want to say, for the sake of Canada's role, Stuart was asking about two Liberal MPs who are extremely pro-Israel, extreme Zionists, and one who has spoken up on the other side. Would that sway the government? And I mean, the notion that the Justin Trudeau government would suddenly have its foreign policy influenced by its backbenchers would be an outbreak of horizontality and grassroots democracy, the likes of which we've never seen in that party. This decision is going to be made in the Prime Minister's office. And the Prime Minister is caught between a majority of Canadians who are horrified and appalled at what they are seeing day after day after day without cease, and pressure from the United States to toe the line. And it's as simple as that. He has a political calculation to make beyond the moral and the legal case that we have laid out in I think, really relentless terms here today. He has a political decision to make. And if he wants to win the next election, he better start listening to the majority of people who are horrified about what they're seeing and get Canada on the right side of history. That's the point. It's not about a point about his caucus or a point about the international law. As you've heard, it's incredibly clear. on the basis of a rank political calculation, the prime minister has to start doing the right thing if he wants to remain prime minister. That's the political point that he needs to attend to.
Thank you, Avi. We actually do have a couple more questions that have started to come in. We have a question from Dylan Robertson at the Canadian Press. Dylan, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks so much, and good afternoon. My question is for both Ambassador Abuamara and the High Commissioner Shaik. I'm just wondering what engagement you've each undertaken with ministers and with government MPs, specifically about the ICJ case, and how you would characterize the kind of responses you got from any liberals that you spoke to.
There hasn't been discussions on the matter yet. In my case, I'm still awaiting a couple of meetings, but with everything with the Christmas vacations and all, it was pushed a little bit. So we're hoping we have the communications in general from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in that manner, but we haven't precisely gotten any answers or any quotes on what's happening from the Canadian side.
As I've said earlier, Dylan, that our application before the court was a decision of the Cabinet of South Africa, which made this decision on the 8th of December of 2023. And then our application was placed before the court on the 29th of December 2023. We have not consulted any government on this matter, and we think that the convention itself allows different governments and parties to the convention to express their view either in one of three different ways. They can support the application, they can oppose the application, or they could indicate that they'll abide by the decision of the court in respect of the application. Now, we have not engaged Minister Joly's office in respect of this matter. We are hoping perhaps if they see fit on how we could explore issues beyond this, we'll be more than willing to do so. And we will await the overtures from Minister Joly's office to do such.
Thank you. We have another question from journalist Emily Best, who wants to know what is the significance of this court case being held from the media? Is there anyone that has any thoughts on that? No, you're muted.
We didn't understand the question. Can you repeat?
I think that Emily's question is about the fact or is about this court case maybe not being available for media and whether that will have an impact perhaps on amplification or understanding by the public. That's what I'm taking from this question.
Bianca, my understanding is that tomorrow, which will be 3 a.m. in Canadian time, South Africa will present its case for the provisional measures for 2 hours, and then the State of Israel will respond on Friday, the 12th, at the same time for 2 hours. Now, I have received links in respect of how you can get live streaming of the actual hearings. And I think it is available on the UN links.
Yeah.
So I'm not too clear about the implication that Emily is raising because it will be live streamed.
Okay, that's an important answer. So there you have it, Emily. It will be live streamed. And the last question that I have here that's been submitted is for somebody, if there's anybody here that could elaborate on what the NDP has done with respect to supporting South Africa's case. We have several people who are interested in hearing more about that.
I think from my quick reading of Heather McPherson's letter online yesterday, it was clearly calling on the government of Canada not to oppose South Africa's application and to abide by the judgment, which I think, as the High Commissioner has just said, is a path through those decisions that would make clear Canada's support for the process and an intention to abide by the decision. Obviously, what we're calling for here goes a little bit further than that. We want Canada to support South Africa's application, but the NDP is calling on the government not to oppose it, which in itself would be real progress in Canada's foreign policy, and to abide by the decision, which is, of course, to state that it would, which is, of course, the most important, I think. But that's more of a legal matter for our experts here.
Thank you. So I'm going to take one last question from Tina Renier, who I'm going to allow to speak. Tina, please go ahead and ask your question. Tina? Okay, I think perhaps Tina has either left or cannot hear me or hasn't unmuted. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds. All right. Okay, so that is it for our questions today. It has been incredible to have all of you, our esteemed guests, here today. I want to thank you for being here to speak about the need for Trudeau, for Canada to endorse this incredibly important initiative to end Israel's genocide in Gaza. I want to thank the journalists for coming out and for your questions. I have deep gratitude to our live audience as well for being here and for your support. Thanks to Just Peace Advocates who've done so much to organize, to Karen Rodman for terrific organizing, Aziza Kanji for so much help in the background, Prakash Jian for your legal expertise, High Commissioner Schaik, Ambassador Abuamara, Professor Richard Falk, Avi Lewis, Wesam Ahmad, thank you so much for being here and for coming on such short notice, for your important comments. We're all going to be following the details of how Canada responds to the submission. We're also going to post a replay of this event on our YouTube channel this afternoon for anyone who's missed it. That's it for our press conference today, and thank you all.